You're listening to Reignite, a podcast where two friends become the saviors of the Citadel. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
Let's get into it. This section of the game, we fought our way to Saren, who was trying to close the arms of the Citadel so that Sovereign could take over and bring forth the Reaper invasion. That's really the whole summary. That's it. That's all there is.
This is the ending of the game. We kept it separate, I think, because we wanted to be able to discuss it at length, even if it was a shorter discussion on the whole. We wanted it to be isolated, because it is a very isolated moment to the rest of the game. You can't interact outside of the path. It's very linear, very directed. A lot of the rest of the game, you can kind of faff about and do whatever the hell you want, whereas in this part of the game, you can take your time. There's no timer per se, but you cannot go wherever you want. You have to go directly to the council room and directly to Saren and engage in that final fight.
I wish that there was a point where I could get different squad mates.
Yeah.
Because I had Garrus and Liara with me. And while Garrus is ideal, because I mesh well with Garrus as a player, I wouldn't have had Liara. I only had her with me for the Prothean bit. And I would have traded her in for perhaps Tali or Rex.
Yeah.
I wish I had the ability to do that instead of having her for this final mission.
But it makes sense. I mean, you kind of rush off and don't interact with your ship again until after this, presumably.
Like, narratively, it makes sense. I just wish that there had been some way to get someone else.
Right. Like, they were all waiting for you on the Citadel or something.
Yeah.
I ended up with Caden, who's been with me through the whole game, and don't make faces at me.
I literally just took a drink of water.
It was in your eyes.
I was looking at you, because you were talking.
And I brought Tali with me.
I think you're projecting.
And I've used the two of them a lot in the campaign. I like the mix of biotics and engineering. That said, I always felt like 2 party members wasn't enough in this game, and I'm starting to feel it more this time around, just because I would love a more diverse group. And it continues in the next couple of games. In the second and third game, you have even more squad mates, and you can still only bring 2 people with you. And I always feel like I don't have enough options.
Yeah, I feel like 3 is literally and figuratively an odd number.
Yeah.
Like in Dragon's Age Origins, I think you have 4 or 5 team members, party members, and I think 4 is more ideal.
Well, and I think in the first game, I totally get only having 2 additional party members, because I would assume part of it is the limits of the hardware and the coding, and it's the new beginning for the game. But as you go on, I feel like, especially when the next couple of games are split over multiple discs, if you're playing it on a console, why not add the ability to have an additional person with you? I mean, a lot of the characters in the second and third game do interact with you more on the ship and are more interactive in the narrative, whether they're with you or not. But I still wish because you can engage. There are places in the second and third game where the whole ship disembarks and you can interact with them in those places, like on the Citadel and other locations. They're just kind of hanging out in the neutral areas. And that was nice, because it made you feel like the party was more involved. Whereas in this game, the only place you interact with them is on the ship.
Yeah.
And so when you're not on the ship, it's like almost like they don't exist.
Yeah. I wish that there was a little bit more that you could do with them. Like, that's why I liked 3 so much, because there were so many opportunities for, like, friendship moments.
Yeah.
So it was more narratively interesting to me to see the development between these characters.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of development between characters in 1. It focuses very much on relationships, like romantic relationships, and not necessarily platonic relationships.
Oh, and also it's a lot of dialogue to get through in the first game. There aren't a lot of actions that happen and moments that happen. It's mostly you go up to the character, you and the character chat, you move on to another character. There's not a lot of interactivity, where that changes in the later games.
Yeah. I don't know if you perhaps did this, but as soon as I got onto the elevator, I regretted it, because I thought, oh no, I should have seen if I could explore anywhere. Do you know if there was any opportunity?
You can't go anywhere.
There's nowhere you can go?
You have to go onto the elevator.
Okay. So I feel a little bit better about that.
Like I said, this part of the game is incredibly linear. You have no choices here. Yeah. You can traverse the areas you're in, but that's it.
I just wasn't sure if there was anything on the Presidium that I could have checked before getting onto the elevator.
No, you're blocked off.
Okay.
I believe you're in a circular area, and the only place you could have walked to is blocked off by the Mako, which is trashed, as I recall the layout. I think
that's right. I'm not 100% sure. I just feel like I saw an area that could have been walked through, but I am not totally
if there
sure.
was, it was only in the immediate area. You cannot leave that part of the map. That I know for a fact.
Yeah. Okay. So once I got into the elevator, I was just like, oh no. But it seems that feeling was unfounded. The problem that I have with the Citadel is that I don't feel that we got an adequate sense of how big it is as a visitor. Like, we get it kind of now when we see all the ships.
Yeah.
And we see it in relationship to the ships. Because it must be massive because Sovereign's massive and Sovereign fits inside of it.
Right.
But I feel like we don't really understand that until this moment. Because there's not a lot of ways to interact with the arms of the Citadel.
Yeah, I mean, you get a very limited... The first time you arrive at the Citadel in the Normandy, you get a sense of size to a point. But yeah, there's not a sense of traversal size, I don't think. And that kind of stays the same throughout the later games.
Yeah.
Especially because in the second game, the Citadel's under construction after what happened at this point in the story, because it gets thoroughly trashed in this battle. Tons of stuff get blown up and destroyed. And so, your access to it is limited. And then in the third game, you have a little more access again. But you never really get the sense of scale of it because I think it would be fairly impossible to communicate.
It would be very difficult and time-consuming to program something like that. But that's my problem with these big, gigantic structures. You show it to me, and then you give me a small portion of it to play in.
Well, yeah, it's the same with Omega in the second game.
Yeah.
You get some access to a lot sections of it, but you don't get a sense of scale for that either.
Yeah.
I think part of it also, at least the assumption is on both Omega and the Citadel, is a lot of it is residential too. And you just don't have access to the residential areas because, of course, why would you? It's private property to a point. And so my guessing is a lot of the stuff we see on the arms is like homes and apartments and like locations where people actually live.
Yeah.
And not the common areas where you would interact with people.
Yeah.
But I don't know that even for a fact. I imagine somewhere in one of the lore books or on the wiki, there's a detailed log of the kind of people who live there and how many people are there and the sense of scale, but I haven't done enough research to know exactly the numbers on that.
Yeah.
But that said, I totally get that. I didn't have a thought of that at this point because, again, because the game forces you to I had the same kind of tunnel vision of let's just go do the thing.
I just think about that stuff.
That's fair. What I do like about this section of the game is that it is very fluidly transitioning between pre-rendered cutscenes and the action that you're involved in. I feel like a lot of other games there's a load between those kinds of shifts, whereas here, the way it's designed, you don't really get a sense of it loading to show that next video or that story moment. It just kind of does it very naturally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's one moment where it felt very abrupt and not very seamless, but that's towards the end.
Yeah.
I had a very just keep going mentality during this whole section.
Yeah.
I just keep going, keep shooting, don't stop.
Yep.
No need to stop, just get to the end.
I will say one of the coolest moments that does give you a sort of a sense of scale is when Sovereign first enters Citadel space and latches onto the Citadel, you're in the elevator. And then you get to see him from the perspective of the elevator because it cuts from him to your elevator as it stops and gets jammed, and then you shoot out the window to walk along the Citadel to get where you need to be. And also something I didn't notice until this time, which maybe I noticed in the past but I don't recall, is when you're fighting the Geth as you fight your way along the outer part of the Citadel to get to the council room, you can see one of Sovereign's legs moving in the background, which is pretty cool. And if I'd noticed it before, it still struck me with awe this time because it's just...
He's just so big.
You don't get a sense of how massive he is when you interact with him, both when you talk to him and when you just see him flying around in space, because him compared to other ships, okay, he's big, but so are the other ships. Like, who knows? But when you see his one leg while you're walking, you really get a sense of scale, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Sovereign's weird.
Yeah. And then walking around on that outside, there's a lot of Geth battling and fighting your way. It's essentially a huge wave of constant combat until you get to near where you enter the Citadel again. Some cutscenes happen, and then you actually enter the Citadel.
So my thought about this part where we have a conversation with Saren was that he mentions that he'd been upgraded to further strengthen his resolve.
Right.
And I wanted to say, buddy, you've been upgraded before now.
Yeah.
You've had that wire sticking out the back of your head since, like, moment one.
Yeah, I think that is just a limitation graphically. I think also, like, his eyes are glowing and all of the tech parts on him are glowing blue, which they weren't before. And so I think they're referring to that. But yeah, the model of Saren, since the moment you meet him, has tubes coming out of him and other things. And what's worse is they don't really go into the biology of Turians, so we have no idea what if maybe those tubes are part of the armor because he has a breather or something that's keeping him alive or something happened. Like, we don't get any of that. We don't get really, unless you read all of the codexes, you don't get a ton of background on all of the races. You have to go out of your way to read it, which I get. It would take a long time to shovel that narrative in to explain that stuff.
Yeah.
But just the same, we have no reason to know why Saren looks the way he looks. Like, we have no idea what happened up until that point and we meet him. We don't know if he's been in horrible battles and seriously injured. We just know he kind of looks like a robot from the moment we meet him.
My thought was that perhaps Sovereign did start the upgrades and implants, but fooled Saren into not seeing it.
Yeah, it's possible.
And then just integrated it into his memories.
Yeah.
The way he needed it to be done.
Right. It's not clear how the indoctrination works. In any of the games, it is not clear. We just know that it happens. And is it the third game where you go onto a derelict Reaper?
It is the second game where you go onto a derelict Reaper.
So we won't go into more details about that, but you do go inside a Reaper in the second game, and you do get some insight based on the scientists who are there on how some of the indoctrination works. But it's never so granular that you know how it progresses. So it's mostly delivered as like a mania that just grows.
The impression that I get is that it's exposure based.
Yeah.
And the longer time you spend exposed to a Reaper, the worse the indoctrination gets.
Right.
So it's like a contagion, so to speak. And Saren, who flies around on Sovereign all the time, is the most vulnerable. Yeah.
I mean, also part of this goes back to a problem you've mentioned, is we don't know how much time has really traversed in this game.
Yeah.
MJ and I are making an assumption that it's probably months, but there's no real way to know.
One of our friends on our Discord channel said that it is a little less than a year at most.
Okay.
Because Game 1 and Game 2 begin in the same year.
Okay.
So
got it.
While the events of Game 1 begin in 2183, I think.
Uh-huh.
I think that is correct. The beginning of Mass Effect 2, like the very beginning, is also 2183. And then time passes.
Right, there's a time loss that you are given in that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that, but also in the beginning of Mass Effect 2, they say that they've been doing the kind of mission they're doing at the beginning of the game for a little while. Like they've been running around.
So we can say 10 months at most.
Right, and 6 months at least.
That would be my guess.
So knowing that, though, it does explain kind of how the indoctrination process works. But again, we don't know a lot about Saren other than what Captain Anderson has informed us of and what the Council has informed us of. So again, his look, on a meta level is how he was designed by the designers. But I was always curious how much of that... Like, I really want an image of Saren before he was on Sovereign, when he was an old school Spectre.
That might exist, because there are books about Anderson and Saren.
That's true. So, I'm just curious, because, like, I want to know, like, how much of that is the Lobster Man's influence.
Every time you say I want to know, I want to be like, can you show me?
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, that's my husband's influence.
Yeah.
He loves Tarzan.
Yeah, well, I still like him anyway. So at this point, you confront Saren, he attacks you, you hide behind cover, and have another cover-based conversation, which seems to be your shtick with Saren at this point. Yeah. Which it didn't occur to me you were in the same position as you were on, what is it, Pharos? Vermeer, where you're hiding behind something and he's above you. He's on a floating platform there.
He's on his stupid hoverboard. I'm so mad about this hoverboard.
There's no other technology like it in the trilogy of Mass Effect games.
Nobody else gets a hoverboard.
Nobody.
I want a hoverboard.
We know. And so what's interesting about this conversation is, so this conversation can go one of two ways. If you don't have maxed out Renegade or Paragon, you fight him on the hoverboard. You fight him in that room. But if you have maxed out one or the other, you get through to Saren, get him to see for a moment and reconnect with his humanity, and then he kills himself.
Yeah.
If you max out the conversation.
I feel very sad for Saren in this moment, because from the very beginning, he was a tool to be used by Sovereign. He and Anderson may have had bad blood, but we'll never really know where he stood, re the Reapers.
Right.
Like, perhaps he was weak to begin with, and that's how Sovereign was able to manipulate him into being an agent of the Reapers.
Right.
But he could have been fighting the whole time.
Yeah, when you meet him, you just think he's a jerk. You don't know that he's been, like, you have no sympathy for this character until this moment, and it's a credit to the writing and how brilliant the writing is that you finally get to connect with, for a very brief moment, the real Saren before he shoots himself.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too that if you don't max out your talkie skills, as it were, you don't get that moment. You just continue until the day he dies thinking he was a terrible person.
Right. And I wish there had been another instance before now of seeing Saren fighting against. Mm-hmm. I don't think there was an instance like that on Vermeer. I think he was very resolved.
Yeah, he is very stoic in that interaction. Oh. But that conversation, to me, I thought was very interesting and very well done. Of course, like we said, if you max out your conversation stuff and convince him that he has been indoctrinated and he comes through for a moment, apologizes, and then shoots himself and falls off his platform dead. Yeah.
So I'm assuming we both did the
Paragon max. Yeah, we both did. It's interesting. I don't really like the Paragon and Renegade choices in this game. I feel like, and we'll talk about this more in our wrap-up episode, are very polarizing. There aren't a lot of them that are run-of-the-mill or ambiguous. Whereas I feel like in the second and third game, there are more possibly ambiguous choices that are considered Renegade or Paragon that you could argue for, like saying this was the right choice. I know it's Renegade and it's viewed poorly, but this was the right moral choice. Right. Whereas I don't get a sense of that in the first game as much.
Yeah, in the first game, Renegade seems very much, this is the badass thing to do.
Yeah.
Whereas in the second game, I think Renegade and Paragon is much more geared towards your attitude.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a moral choice.
Right.
It's more of an attitude choice.
Like, I felt like in the second game, a lot of the Renegade stuff was out of frustration. Like, I felt frustrated, and so I reacted in a frustrated manner, which was a Renegade thing to do, which makes more sense, and I'd be more likely to do.
Which is something that I've actually discussed with Rex Halligan in the past, and I've mentioned it before, that he felt in Mass Effect 2, it was one of the few games where it makes sense to be a Renegade.
Yep.
Because of the things that you have experienced.
Yeah, totally. So after this point, it's more cutscene. You get to see more of the battle in space. Council. Oh, does the council happen before you fight final form?
Yeah.
Okay, so, right. So he shoots himself. You approach the Citadel panel, take control, thanks to your friendly neighborhood Prothean AI, allows you to gain access to the Citadel, and you have full control. So now it's up to you to open the arms and make a decision.
So your decision is, do you send in the Alliance to save the Council, or do you hold them back and wait for your shot at Sovereign?
Right. And with these choices, no matter what, you get a shot at Sovereign, but there will be more Alliance casualties if you save the Council. There'll be less Alliance casualties, but the Council will die if you don't save them.
What did you do?
I saved the Council.
I also saved the Council. What was your reasoning?
I don't care how people treat me. I will not let someone die despite me. At the core of it, I felt like I couldn't justify, just because they didn't believe me and they gave me a hard time, that I could let them die.
That's kind of what I said. I said that I chose to save them because I didn't feel like it was right to let them die because they didn't agree with me. And I was also confident in the Alliance, the ability of the Alliance to fight and win.
Yeah, same. And also, we'll get to it as we're wrapping up the ending, but I'd forgotten about the conversation you have with the Council once you save them, which also justified my choice a little bit.
Right. I also felt that letting them die would have given form to their previous concerns regarding humans.
Yeah.
Their belief that humans are only out for themselves.
Yeah.
If I had let them die, I would have just been affirming that belief.
Yeah, and that's a belief that you've been spending the whole game fighting to counteract.
Right, so as a Paragon.
As a Paragon, so it didn't make sense to let them die. Also, on a meta level, if you let them die, they're just replaced by another Council that's the same personality on the meta level. But again, my choice was based on, it was wrong to let people die because they didn't treat me the way I wanted to be treated.
Right.
But that's also a very good point, that you're reinforcing a stereotype if you let them die, that all humans just care about themselves and are greedy, which is still sort of true. But at least gives you a leg to stand on when fighting to defend yourself against things like that in the future. So after that choice, then we get to fight Saren's final form. This moment, from a body horror perspective and a horror perspective in general, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It didn't freak me out as much this time, but I remember the first time I played the game, it was really unnerving.
Yeah, it was scary the first time.
Yeah. So what happens is you send your crew, whoever your two party members are, to check on Saren to make sure he's dead. And one of them, they'll both approach, but one of them will pull out a pistol and shoot him in the head again. For me, it was Tolly.
For me, it was Garrus.
They walk up, they just pull out a pistol, put a couple rounds in his head and go, yep, he's dead. And then things start to get wacky. Red electricity shoots up everywhere, and Sovereign puts all of his energy into embodying Saren through his upgrades to transform him into a monster he could control. Right. Essentially creating a humanoid form of Sovereign.
He basically becomes a Geth Stalker.
Yep, but a giant one. And speaks to you through him. Sovereign antagonizes you and speaks to you through this Gethified version of Saren.
Yeah, I didn't really like this fight overall, though, because it's like the Geth Stalker thing.
It's finicky. And the problem is, if you're not using a spray and pray weapon, so like an automatic firing weapon, it is very hard to hit him.
Yeah, I did a lot of powers, because at least with the powers I can kind of freeze the scene, aim, and then let it go. But the reason why I didn't super like it is that at the end of the fight, it ends abruptly. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's not there anymore. Yeah. He just disintegrates. But I could have lived with the disintegration if there'd been some more ease into that cutscene. Like, maybe show in the cutscene delivering a final blow, and then he dies.
Yeah. What happens is you get the final blow, it cuts to a cutscene of Sovereign losing power and starting to fall, and then they cut back to him disintegrating, and then the rest of the story happens. But it's very abrupt. There's no, defeat moment. They just cut away from the battle. They do it twice, actually. When you get him to half health, it cuts away to give you an update on the battle. And then when you deplete his health, it cuts away again.
Yeah.
I get the point of it. It wants to show that Sovereign invested a lot in that moment to try and defeat you, and in you defeating that Geth Stalker took out his shields and like disrupted him for a moment, which allowed the humans to get a killing blow. But that is the only time the cutaways do feel very sudden, because you're in the middle of the action. All the other times you're walking into a room and this picture fades out and then goes into the cutscene.
Right.
And it's a lot more fluid. And so, of course, after you defeat Gethified Saren Sovereign, the physical embodiment of Sovereign, the Reaper, starts to fall off the Citadel and loses power, and that's when everyone goes in for a final killing blow. And it's one of my favorite moments, seeing the Normandy on attack, because it does this great pull up, flip, and then dive into the falling Sovereign, shoots through him, blows him up in the center, and then goes flying past. It was just a really neat spaceship battle scene.
Yeah, Joker doing what he does best.
Yep. I did forget exactly how the game ends, even though I know it happens once I was in it. So after Sovereign gets blown up, parts of him fly everywhere, and a few of those parts fly right into the council chamber. And so literally it cuts to the outside and showing these pieces flying and a little piff as it hits the council chamber, and then it cuts into the council chamber where it's a complete wreck, which was kind of another nice sense of scale. Mm-hmm. Like this idea that when it made an impact in greater space, it's just this tiny little poof. But once you go into the Citadel, it shows it crashing through the Citadel. It's a mess, parts everywhere. Not sure where anybody is. I thought that was kind of a nice transition moment between cutscene and gameplay.
Yeah, and then your two party members who are found by Anderson, neither of them can answer where Shepard is because they didn't see, and they think that Shepard might be dead. And they look so sad and dejected. But then when Shepard comes running out from the rubble, they both look so awestruck.
So awestruck.
And I have Garrus in my party. I was like, that's the moment Garrus fell in love with Shepard.
I could say the same for Caden, who had a big smile on his face when I came running out. So we'll see how that goes. The problem with the major problem I have with this game is how the humans move. There's just something about being so familiar with the motor skills of a human that when they're made to walk or run, the minorest of inconsistencies go off like red flags to me and just make them look awkward. Like, everyone's made fun of Shepard's walk and run animations throughout most of the games, just because they seem very stiff. Whereas with the alien characters, even though they're humanoid, it's like, well, I don't know. That's how they walk. They exist. And so there's this moment, at least for male Shepard, where he's running up to take his heroic pose, and the way he's holding his stomach and he's hunched over, it just looks weird to me. I'm probably overanalyzing and nitpicking, but it took me out of that moment a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't notice anything like that with FemShep.
Yeah.
She looked like she naturally does.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it could just be me nitpicking and that it wasn't that obvious to anyone else. I mean, I have spent a lot of time with the first game more than the others. But yeah, and so that moment happens, and then, the dust settles, and you get to make your final choice of the game before the game ends, which is, because we both rescued the council comes and thanks you for rescuing them. And at quite length, essentially confirming all of the things that we just talked about. Like, they're, thanking us for making that decision, acknowledging the loss of the soldiers, essentially saying, we did not expect this, but we are humbled and grateful, and, there's no amount of words that can justify the sacrifices you made to save us. Which, again, as a paragon who is like, well, I can't just let them die, definitely reaffirmed my decision and all the thoughts that you had said, MJ, about them being like, oh, yeah, I guess humans aren't just selfish. They care for us as well. And so the final choice is they talk about how this moment recognizes that the humans deserve a place on the council finally. And they acknowledge that humanity should be serving on the council. They have a Spectre. They should be a bigger part of the greater picture of the galaxy and the universe. And they say, we have to, do the politics thing. We have to review and decide. But a nomination from the Spectre who saved the Citadel would go a long way. And so you can choose to nominate Udina, nominate Anderson, or say it's not your business.
Yeah. Like, you say, meh, your choice.
And so, since I said what I did with the council first, MJ, you say, what was your choice?
I chose Anderson.
Okay.
I chose Anderson because he's honest, he's forthright, he has the best interests of humanity in mind. He also completely believed me about the Reapers and will not sleep on the threat.
Okay. I, for the first time in the entire game, made a meta decision. I chose, and I didn't want, and I think I would have made this choice anyway, but I chose to let the politicians hash it out. Because personally, when it comes to politics, I get involved, but if I don't have to, I won't. And so that's partly in line with me, but also in the meta, eventually Anderson gets retconned out of the council for whatever reason in the third game. And I know they give a reason in the game, I just can't remember what it is. And so for me, I'm like, why pick if it's not going to matter in a game or two anyway? But the reality was also, Shepard essentially goes, let the politicians figure this out. I'm a soldier, which for me, anytime I've been parallel to politics of any kind, I've been like, well, I'm a fish out of water. This is not something I'm familiar with. So that was the choice I made. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out in the next game, because I don't think I've ever made that choice before. Because one of them, spoiler alert, one of them does end up on the council in the second game. I'm curious, stepping away, what happens.
I think it'll be Udina.
Probably, since the meta of the game goes that way.
Yeah.
But even still, I am curious to see how that goes, which is also part of the reason I did it, is because I don't want to be the person who makes that decision, and I just want to see where it goes. I want to trust the council now that I've saved their asses to make the right choice.
Right. I'm surprised that they didn't say, well, in that case, let's just decide right now.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I feel like when you nominate Anderson, do they choose him right away? No, yeah. Right? They do.
They do.
Yeah.
And Udina's mad about it.
Of course he is.
And you can say, I trust Anderson, or Anderson is better than any politician I know.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Anderson has never once lied to me.
Yeah.
Anderson has never fucked me over.
Pretty much, yeah.
So that's why I chose him. And
yeah, I'm surprised they don't just pick then and there, since you step away. But it does make it sound like a more political process if you choose not to choose.
Yeah, I also, like, from a slightly meta standpoint, I would prefer to have Anderson in place anyway, because
he's Space Dad.
He's Space Dad, but also he's a very useful ally to have in Game 2.
Yeah.
So he does things for you in Game 2 that he cannot do if he is not the council member.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I think that it's very interesting that you get to make that choice post the final conflict. And it's always fascinated me about the metadata of Mass Effect, because for those who don't know, although I don't know how you don't know, you can upload your character into the second game. And when you do, all of the decisions, the choices, everything you did go with it. And it affects the second and third game, which has always been my favorite thing about the Mass Effect series, on top of the lore and everything else, is that all of your decisions do matter and that they make a difference in the games that follow. And so this is the end of the game. After you make that choice, there's some more chat and murmuring, and then a hero splash screen of you standing in front of the galaxy, which I took a screenshot of, and we will share later, of the final Shepard at those last moments of the game. And then the credits run. So that's Mass Effect 1. We have completed the first Mass Effect.
God, it took so long.
It's funny. I don't feel like it took that long. I feel like it was fast, because it was only because
a short game.
Well, and also in podcaster brain, 10 episodes is not a lot of episodes.
Yeah, it's not a lot of episodes.
As someone who's done over 100 episodes on one of his other podcasts, like, to me, it seems so small in the pantheon of podcasting. But also, the second and third games are going to be twice, if not triple the size, because there's just more DLC, more missions, more character development, more story, a bigger world, all of that stuff.
ME2 is going to be very easy to break up into episodes. I think ME3 will be kind of in between.
Yeah.
And Andromeda will be hard.
Yeah. As someone who's not played it, that's all you. I can't help you with that breakdown.
I have to do it. I'm probably going to look up a walkthrough and kind of do the walkthrough.
That makes sense.
a guide for breaking up episodes. We'll see what happens.
So yeah, so Mass Effect 1. I hope you enjoyed playing along with us or listening along if you didn't play. From here, we're going to talk about side quests and DLC, and then do a postmortem on the game as 2 more episodes to round out the season for a full 12 episodes.
No, we're going to have more than that.
Are we?
Yes, we're going to have more than that, and we've discussed it.
Well, I'm talking about just to wrap up on Mass Effect 1 specifically.
Okay, so we're doing side quest / DLC.
Yep.
Postmortem.
Yep.
Guest episode with one of our podcast friends.
Yes.
Guest episode with someone in person.
Yes.
One shot.
Yes. Well, so I was specifically talking about the 12 episodes just based on Mass Effect 1. Those other episodes have the ability to bleed over to other things.
Well, I consider them all to be Mass Effect 1 because that's what we're going to be talking about.
Fair enough. So it took us 10 episodes to get through the game's content. It will take 12 episodes to fully discuss the game and 15 episodes in the full season.
Yeah.
Which we're very excited to also share with you the stuff to come in the future. I am not looking forward to discussing the opening of Mass Effect 2, but that is a story for another time.
I have a fun story when we get to it.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. So next up is Fandom Corner. This Fandom Corner is brought to us by one of our friends on the Discord. It
could be considered a discount because it's free to join the Discord.
No, that's not how that works, and you know it. On our Discord, our friend Emma brought to our attention a post about Kaidan Alenko. It's basically a Kaidan appreciation post, and she asked if we would discuss it. The source is octerminal.tumblr.com. And I'm just going to read this post. You know, the thing that interests me the most about the whole Kaidan is so boring. He has no personality. I remember nothing about him. That's how forgettable he is. Thing is that I feel that's rather the point. Like, here's the thing. Kaidan is an L2 biotic. Per lore, human biotics have it rough. They're not welcomed among human society. No one really likes them except the Alliance, and that's likely only because the Alliance can weaponize them. I find it hard to believe there's absolutely no discrimination towards biotics in the Alliance, and that's a discussion for another day. L2s are especially stigmatized. There's multiple in-game references calling them unstable and insane because of neurological disorders the implants can cause. Chakwas has a line that I always take to be tongue-in-cheek, that Kaidan's lucky because he only gets migraines. Like migraines are small stuff. The point of that line is relativity. Kaidan's relatively lucky. He still has it bad, but many have it worse. So again, here's the thing. Kaidan is an L2 biotic in a society that doesn't like him and that already views him as dangerous. Ergo, he's going to be more heavily scrutinized than both non-biotics and the average L3 biotic. This would explain a lot about him, even without factoring in his backstory. But his backstory really cements it. Regardless of romance, if you talk to Kaidan, you always find out that when he was a kid, he killed someone in self-defense. He didn't do it consciously. His life was threatened, so he retaliated, and that retaliation killed someone. Now, Kaidan isn't torn up over killing Vernus anymore. What he's torn up about is how he was treated after Vernus. It was never about Rana herself, or the fact that she didn't want to date him. It was about the fact that Rana saw him as a monster afterward, on par with Vernus. Kaidan was put into an impossible situation that forced him to lose control or die, and the lesson he learned is that the person he trusted was terrified afterward. If someone who was a fellow L2, let alone a friend, reacted like that, how would a stranger? How would someone who's not even a biotic? There are 3 lines in Mass Effect 1 that sum up where Kaidan's head is at most of the game. Upon learning about Rana and Vernus' death. Kaidan: I'm no more disciplined than any other biotic, Shepard. This is all ancient history. I'm over it. Shepard: You agonize over doing the right thing. You never let yourself lose control. Then, after Kaidan rushes to assure Shepard that really he is 100% competent, feelings who, don't worry, I'm fine. Shepard: It's okay to have weaknesses. Just means you're human. So deal with it. Caden, it's just been a while. I don't usually think of much beyond the job. Then, en route to Ilos, after Shepard asks him why he's still hesitating. Caden, you know what? You're right. About everything. I think about losing you and I can't stand it. The galaxy will just keep going. Everything, even the Reapers, will come around again. But you and I, we are important right now. This is what will never happen again. Us. Shepard, you make me feel human. Caden doesn't want to hurt anyone again, to appear threatening, so he holds back on his biotics and his feelings and focuses on doing his job. His service record is impressive, and Chakwa says that he has over a dozen special commendations. Caden's fear of losing control is so debilitating that by the time Shepard meets him, he no longer feels human. That's what the line is implying. Shepard makes Caden feel human because Caden doesn't feel like he is. That's how much he's been dehumanized by others and by himself. So, yes, Caden is boring. That's on purpose. He tries to project nothing but a formal, dutiful Marine whose competence can never be called into question. He doesn't always succeed, mind you, but a lot of people stop at the boring part and thus never pick up on the parts where he lets the formality slip enough so his sense of humor and natural curiosity shine through. He's not particularly interested in drawing attention to himself, at least not outside of a professional setting, because he's an L2 biotic, because he lost control once and it killed someone, and he was shunned for it, because. The truth of it is that Caden is an exceptionally well-written character with a lot of complexity. You just have to be willing to read between the lines, especially in Mass Effect 1, because that boy doesn't know the meaning of being direct at all in that game. Obviously, if you let him live into Mass Effect 3 and he survives the coup, you can see how much he's grown. He's learned how to reave, which is implied to be a very hard biotic ability for a human to learn, because he finally stopped holding himself back. He no longer stumbles over his feelings, and he's free with his affection. And one thing he's really insistent on giving Shepard is a sanity check, or a chance to be a normal person, because Caden knows exactly what it's like to feel alienated from everyone around you, and to be seen only as a weapon.
Huh.
That's a really good post.
It is a really good post. And I have to agree, I was one of the Caden is boring people. And
yeah,
now
I was too.
And now having replayed ME1 and saving him and going out of my way to interact with him to learn. Same with Ashley, though Ashley's life was shorter. I have a newfound respect for both characters. I see those dimensions that they talk about.
Yeah, I always get hung up on being cranky with Caden because he says some kind of shitty things if you romance him.
Yeah.
And that always annoyed me. But as a friend, I think he's a better person.
Yeah.
I think he's a better person as a friend than a romantic partner, in my opinion.
Right. What I'm curious about is because you're limited to only the third game to engage with him in romance. I'm curious what he's like as a male romantic partner with a male character, because I don't know anyone who's romanced him, and I'm sure you're out there, but among my friends anyway, nobody has.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is the curiosity, because I like Raphael Sbarge, who voices him. I like the character now more than I did, but I am genuinely curious about his feelings, and I have feelings for him, but I'm not sure what they are yet. And it's partially curiosity, but I mean, a lot of romance starts as curiosity.
Yeah, and you can't really do anything about it. It's not actionable until Game 3, so who knows how you're going to feel by the end of Game 2.
Right, because there are a lot of very pretty people in the second game.
Yes. But yeah, so there was also a post about Ashley that I'm not going to share because I'm not very pleased with the way the original poster handled the racism comments.
Yeah, they kind of forgive it and give it an excuse, and I don't like that.
And it's one thing to say she was very racist at this point in time, and that is correct. But over time, she learned to flip on her prejudices and to actively fight against them.
Yeah, that post focuses on covering them up or excusing them instead of talking about growth, which is what happens if you continue to work with her. She grows as a person. I believe in the third game she even comments on how she used to be.
Yeah, and she changes a lot. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to actually getting to see her in a different environment and to see how she grows as a person, because in the past I never saved her.
Yeah.
I think I saved her once, and that was many, many years ago.
Yeah, and it's funny because in the past I always saved her because I always felt like at least she had a personality, whereas I ignored Caden's personality. And so I always, even though I barely liked her as much as I liked Caden, between the two of them, like I said, her outbursts and her being opinionated and being stubborn was a character, like, it felt like she had a personality, right, whereas I ignored Caden's. So I rescued her anyway. So we're both in unfamiliar territory. I feel like I've saved Caden at least once, but he's definitely not the regular person I've saved. Yeah. So I'm not familiar with the experience of him going on to the later games.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Reignite.
Why are you trying to end this episode when I still have more stuff on my notebook?
Because I don't know where we're going next, and you stand there clenching your notes.
Well, I was waiting to see if you had anything else to say.
I didn't.
So after Fandom Corner, we have a game to play.
Oh, yes. That's why I was looking to wrap up, because I forgot.
So the game is Who Said That? This version is only for Matt, because I'm the one that looked up the quotes, so I know who it was. But going forward, if you want to play this game, please send us a quote with absolutely no context. Just what the quote is, not who it's by. We'll guess, and then we'll look it up to find out if we're right. If you want to record yourself saying the quote, so that way we can integrate it into the podcast, you can certainly do so, and email it to us at reignitepod@gmail.com. This idea was worked on by all of our Discord channel people. So the game is Who Said That? 3 rounds.
Okay.
First round. A private docking bay. Wonder how much the Alliance had to shell out for this. Who said it?
Caden?
No. Do you want to try again?
Ashley?
No.
I don't know.
It was Rex.
Okay.
Round 2. I'm surprised you're willing to fight Krogan, Rex. I thought you'd want to stand with your own.
That was definitely Caden.
That was Caden.
Yeah, because I remember that quote. So are these all from ME1?
Yes.
Okay, I figured.
Yes, I wouldn't give you stuff from a game that we have not discussed on this podcast.
That's fair.
Please, I'm a professional.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is...
the third one.
The third one, but 2 people talking on it.
Okay, I'm guessing both of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Person 1. Nobody died. Person 2. I could shoot someone if it'd make you feel better. Person 1 again. Nah, I'm good.
Garrison Tully?
No.
Garrison Rex?
No.
Is Garrus involved at all?
No.
None of the 3 names I mentioned?
No.
Interesting.
I would have told you if one of them was right.
Ashley and Caden?
Yes.
Okay. Is Ashley the one who says I could shoot someone if it make you feel better? No, it's Caden.
It's Caden.
It's sass, yeah. He's sassy when he wants to be.
Yep. Yeah, he does have a good sense of humor.
I'll give myself 1 of 2 points for that one.
You get 0 points.
I got the second one at least.
Fine, you can have 1 point out of 4.
Whatever.
That's a failing grade, my dude.
Well, I'm sorry to memorize all the dialogue for the thousands of characters in this one game.
So if you want to play that game, go ahead and send us a quote. Just make sure you don't tell us who said it, because that way I can play too.
Yes. And then, but then how will we know the right answer?
We'll have to look it up.
All
right, we'll have to put our research brains to use.
Fair enough. So you not only would be able to stump us on Finger Quotes live podcasting, but then we would do research live to find the answer. Live research.
We have editing technology, Matt. You know that, right?
Yeah, but I don't like to edit out the stuff because it gives the podcast personality.
You can edit out the 5 minutes of me Googling something.
That's true. I could edit that out, I suppose.
Okay. All right. Next up is reviews.
Yes.
We got some reviews.
If you would like to have your review read live, Finger Quotes.
You should write one.
Yes, on our iTunes page, on Facebook, You can email us a review, though we much prefer it to be on one of those platforms so it gets us featured.
Well, the reason why you're saying that, the review that we were emailed, he lives in a completely different region, so we can't see that review. So he emailed it to us as proof that he wrote a review.
Oh, cool.
That's what that was.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. But yes.
Someone just emailed us.
I mean, you never know. We have people in the Discord who, like, have gone out of their way to say that they don't use any of the things where they can write reviews. So I'm calling you out, Ian.
Don't call Ian out just because the podcast platform that he uses doesn't really use review.
I know, I'm kidding.
I'm defending.
Ian doesn't need your defense. He can defend himself. Anyway, would you like to read the first review?
Yes, I'm going to read this review that came on our Facebook. Facebook is facebook.com/reignitepod. You can write a recommendation for us there, just like Jason Lee. I never got hugely into the Mass Effect games for a variety of mainly gameplay reasons. So it's nice to have a podcast with two passionate hosts going through the game and telling me what I missed out on and giving their own perspective on the game. So, Jason, just so you know, this is only one perspective. You're going to have to find another Mass Effect podcast where they go through the Renegade options because clearly that's not us.
Yeah, clearly we're both going to be paragons. But I think it's more interesting to make choices based on the choices we would make. But yeah, we need a scrupulous person on this podcast so they will make not necessarily poor decisions, but more impulsive decisions, I feel like. I am reading a review from our iTunes page. It is titled Emmy Fans with an exclamation point, and it's a 5-star review. It is by Old Bay 777. The passion and love for the Mass Effect really comes through. The Mass Effect? What am I? It doesn't say that. It says, the passion and love for Mass Effect really comes through. The hosts are very reflective and have a lot of interesting insights on the games. I want to replay these games now just to play through with their insight. So, thank you. I hope you've started playing Old Bay. If you haven't, please do. And let us know how your playthrough turns out. Are you a renegade? Could you be our long-lost renegade brother or sister or neither?
Nibbling.
Just so we can have another perspective. But yeah, and to that end, if you are playing through these games, as I know some of you listening are, please give us your impressions of these moments. Comment on the posts on the website, on Facebook, reply on Twitter. But let us know your perspective on these moments in the games and what choices you made. Especially with this episode. If you're listening and you killed the council, tell us why. I'd love to know why, because there are plenty of good reasons why.
There are so many good reasons. John gave one, actually.
John Lestrange.
Bradley Lestrange. John Bradley Lestrange.
He has so many names. What was his reason for killing them?
He, I believe, first of all, fuck the council.
Well,
I think that was one reason.
Yes.
And the second reason, I believe, was he didn't feel right sacrificing the lives of the Alliance to save a council that didn't support them at all.
Or respect them, yeah. No, that's legit. It's a lot of chest pounding, but it's legit chest pounding. Like, I'm going to protect my own because they don't care about them.
Right. I think that was one of his reasons. Yeah. So, yes, please reach out to us with the differences in your playthrough versus ours, because this is, like I said, just one or two perspectives on the game, and there's so many different ways you can play it.
Yep.
And we would hate for things to get missed out on. So, as Matt said, we are all over social media. We are Reignite Pod on Twitter, Reignite Pod on Instagram, Reignite Pod on Tumblr. We are facebook.com/reignitepod. Our email is reignitepod@gmail.com.
I think you can see the through line here.
We're very easy to find.
Yeah. If you want to find us, you can. And we are also on Discord as well, actually,
yes,
which we had mentioned earlier. We have a core group of folks that we chat with pretty regularly. I'd say almost daily.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Ian, April, Tim, Hoppler, who is from the Faroe Islands. Hoppler, if I said your name wrong, I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry. And Emma, who is from the UK. We're usually on the chat, talking all the time. Sometimes I'm in voice chat, just dicking around. So you can always join us and hang out.
Yeah, a link to the Discord to join it is on our Twitter page. It is our pinned post at the top of our Twitter page. This is, of course, for the entire Certain Point of View Discord server, where Reignite is just one of the shows featured on it. We are part of that network of Certain Point of View Media. But please join us in the conversation there. It's been a lot of fun interacting with a ton of different folks on the different shows since I've been on almost all of them. Also, of course, shout out to our fellow podcasts on Certain Point of View. There is the flagship show, Certain Point of View, which is a sometimes Star Wars podcast, but always a nerdy podcast hosted by Ben and Addie. There's, of course, Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, which I host with Jeff Moonen, which is a general gaming podcast. There is the show you're listening to right now, Reignite, hosted by me and MJ. And there is the Scruffy Nerf Herders podcast, which is a play podcast based in the D20 Star Wars universe. It's been long running, and it's DM'd by Case Aiken, who is also the host of Another Pass with Case Aiken, which is a movie podcast where him and a guest will take another pass at scripts that need reworking.
I think I'm going to be on that sometime in January, but I'm not sure. Case and I are trying to figure out our schedules.
But I've been on that a few times. The most recent episode I did was talking about the train wreck that I loved every second of, which was Venom, the movie. The Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movie, essentially. So go check that out.
A rom-com for the ages.
I mean, it was between a man and his symbiote. I loved it. Anyway, more on that. You can listen to that episode. Please like, subscribe, and follow everything that you're interested in, and feel free to write a review as well.
We are also on Redbubble. You can get a t-shirt like our good friend Tim did. You could get a t-shirt, you could get a sticker, you could get a mug, you could get a clock, you could get anything your heart desires with the Reignite logo on it. Just search Reignite Pod on Redbubble, or Reignite logo specifically.
Also, Tim, if you have not yet sent us a photo of you wearing our shirt, please do. We'll feature you on the social media.
Tim sent me a photo of him wearing the shirt.
Well, find out if he's okay with us putting it on social media then, because I would like to share it with the link on where people can get it. Tim
also found Meteor Bellion to be very funny from last episode.
Oh. Meteor Bellion. Yeah.
I forgot all about that until he said something about it. It was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that happened.
It has trouble reading sometimes.
Also, the folks who have been sharing fun memes and other stuff on the internet that has to do with Mass Effect with us, please continue to do so. We love seeing that stuff. It always gives us a laugh.
Also, Mark Meir liked one of my tweets.
Mark Meir, we love you. Even though we talk about how much more we love Jennifer Hale, because how could we not? And I'm sure you would agree, as she is amazing. We love you as well. I will say this about Mark Meir's performance, because I was down on it in the past, is that now, having played through the game and really trying to identify with the character as an extension of me, his voice, I think, is very perfect for that. He has a way of presenting himself that just seems to work really well. And so I'm really fond of that. So thank you, Mark Meir, for all your work, and continue to be awesome.
Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you to Dan Bull for our theme song, the Mass Effect rap, to David Boyle, our dear, dear friend, for our Reignite logo.
And for DMing our future campaign of nuttiness that will be featured as an episode.
I'm so very excited.
Yeah, we're going to drive him crazy, I'm pretty sure.
Oh no, Dave loves us.
That's true. Well, for now. He doesn't know me that well yet.
He loves me.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Thank you all for listening, as always. I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
I'm MJ.
And we should go. Do you like movies?
Any movies. Old movies, new movies.
Bad movies.
Sad movies.
I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Rachel Corky Shank.
And together we host Screen Snark, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers.
It's a podcast dedicated to the movies that are in our eyes, on our minds, and in our hearts.
Featuring guests of a wide selection of entertainment backgrounds, performers, writers, creatives.
So please join us for the casual cinema conversation every other Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
And follow us on Twitter at @screen_snark, and we'll see you at the movies. All right, we're supposed to do that bit together.